Hello, welcome to Click to Startup, an entrepreneurial video series where we invite local subject matter experts to answer our most frequently asked questions from startup founders and small business owners via quick and easy how-to videos. I'm Destin Ortego, Director of the Opportunity Machine, Lafayette Center for Entrepreneurs, and today I'll be talking about the Bullseye Method, a strategy for picking the right marketing channel for your business at every stage. So this method comes from this book right here, How Any Startup Can Achieve Explosive Customer Growth Traction. And so this book is a fantastic book. I recommend it to pretty much anyone that comes in to the Opportunity Machine or anyone that we work with who's just trying to gain traction, trying to figure out the right channels to work on and to utilize. It's written by Gabriel Weinberg, CEO and founder of DuckDuckGo, and Justin Mares, who's the founder of Kettle and Fire. Bullseye Method is a very efficient way of focusing in on what channels work best for your company. And it can be used from testing stage all the way through enterprise. I mean, it's really something that can be utilized at every single stage of the company. And what's great about the method is that it's something that helps you to remember to reevaluate yourself at every single stage of the company and make sure that you're changing up the channels, because every channel that you utilize may not work for every single stage of your business. So it's really important to go through the process of reevaluate it. This will be a fairly short and simple video because it's really not a long method. It's a really easy method to understand and process and utilize, but I just don't see a lot of people using it. And I think it's something that people should really be aware of. And so because it's so efficient, it really pairs well with some of the other practices that we teach and we recommend, which is Lean Startup by Eric Ries, and also Business Model Generation by Alexander Osterwalder and Yves Pignor. And so it's really great pair tool with these canvases, the Lean Startup Canvas, and also the Business Model Generation book and the Business Model Canvas. Efficiency helps with keeping the risk low, and the lower the risk that you have for your business, and you can really start running in your company and keeping it sustainable and profitable. And so it's really great tools to all utilize all the way around, but we want to make sure that you have access to these tools. And so we're going to be doing some videos on these tools as well. But first one we're going to start off with is the Bullseye Method. So here's a real overview, a high-level overview of the Bullseye Method. It starts by focusing in on what your traction goals are, which we'll talk more about in a second, and then also looking at the third ring, the middle ring, the inner ring, and then also trying to figure out when is a good time for you to rinse and repeat and reevaluate what it is that you're doing and whether or not it's working. So you can see here that even whenever you have achieved your traction goals, you're still at a certain point in time, you're going to reassess and start the whole process over again. And then if you didn't hit your traction goals and you haven't met any traction goals at all, you're still going to reassess and start all over again. So it's really easy to figure out what it is that you need to do next. But we're going to give some examples to make it very clear on, how it's utilized, and not just kind of say like, well, here's the process. So starting with traction goals, and really, the traction goals, when it comes to assessing your traction goals, you're going to narrow it down to one of these three things. And honestly, these three things could all probably be, smashed into one, because they're all pretty much trying to do the same thing in a way. But, you're trying to basically prove, is your company desirable and is it viable? And then that's really where your traction goals are mainly going to be focused on. And then when you're able to prove that your company is desirable and viable, then you're going to be able to prove that it's worth your time and energy spending on it. And not just your time and energy, but also any co-founders that you have or any employees that you're hiring, in order to keep them all motivated and on board, especially if you're a startup company. It's really important to be able to show traction to them as well, to make sure that they are staying just as motivated as you are, and to even motivate yourself to make sure that it's worth your time continuing to go on, especially if you're a startup company, or if you're starting a small business, or if you're running a small business and you've been running it for a while and it's not necessarily keeping up with the traction and keeping up with the business that you once had, it's really important to regain that traction to keep yourself motivated to continue running the business. And then especially if you're trying to raise money from investors or get a loan from a bank, they're going to want to see traction in your business. It's very, very difficult for a startup founder to raise funds now on just an idea. It's almost practically impossible. Entrepreneurs have just gotten too efficient with figuring out ways to test, improve traction, improve product market fit, and prove that people want the product that they're building or the service that they're offering. And so investors are just not going to invest in ideas anymore. They're going to invest in companies that are starting to prove traction, already have traction. And so you really have to be able to do that efficiently, especially if you don't have a lot of money to start off with in order to run tests and to build things and to work towards maybe a minimum viable product to showcase. So utilizing the Bullseye method will really help you with developing tests. And we'll probably do another video later on some examples of different ways that you can test your business idea. But just know that this is a really good method for pairing with developing tests to test your business idea as well. And so starting off with the outer ring, you're going to look at these 19 different traction channels. And these are all the 19 different traction channels that you can come up with. If you're able to come up with another one outside of these that doesn't really fit in with one of these, please send us an email at hello@opportunitymachine.org. And I really want to know what it is. And then if it seems like it doesn't fit in, I'll probably go ahead and send an email to the guys who wrote this book, because they said, if you find anything outside of this, let us know, because they've done a lot of research to really figure out what are the possible channels out there. And so I'm not going to go through each of these individual channels today in detail, because it's not really about each individual channel. It's more about the process of the Bullseye method. But I will give some examples so that way you can have a good idea of how this really works and kind of where you should be at each stage of this method. But you know, looking at it in the circle right now, that's not really the best way for you to lay it out whenever you get into the outer ring stage. Really, in the outer ring, you're trying to brainstorm 2 to 3 ideas for each of the 19 channels. So what I would recommend is laying it out on a whiteboard if you can. If you have a big whiteboard, great. Go through, write each of the 19 different traction channels out, and then write 1, 2, and 3 underneath each one. Have a space for 3 different ideas. Come up with a minimum of 2. Because you want to make sure that you have at least 2 different options in each one to give yourself enough options to choose from, and make sure that you're really pushing forward with giving effort into each channel, because a lot of people automatically have biases against certain channels. They're like, you know, that the social media is just not going to work for my company, or, you know, PR, you know, publicity stunts is not going to work for my company. Offline ads doesn't work, you know, let's see, search engine marketing doesn't work for my business. And you know, that's fine. Maybe it doesn't, but it's really important for you to remove all your biases and to try things. One of the best things about this method is that it helps you get out of the mindset of, you know, focusing on only on the things that you think are going to work, and help give you the room to start to try things out and to test things out and to figure out that, oh, wow, this channel actually works for me and my business for a multitude of reasons. Maybe it's because, you know, no one else in your industry has decided to utilize it or thought to utilize it, or maybe they've tried it out before and failed, but for whatever reason, whether it's a geographic location of your business, or whether it's just the branding and the looks and of your business, or just the people that you have behind it, maybe there's just something different about your business, even if it's in the similar industry as other businesses, that channel actually works for your business. And so it's really important to try things out and come up with 2 to 3 ideas. Kind of stop at 3, because past 3, that's really where your ideas are probably going to start to deteriorate a little bit. Even if you're working with other people to brainstorm ideas, you're probably going to come up with 3 really, really good ideas for most of these channels. And then anything after 3 within one channel, you're probably, those ideas are going to start to go downhill. So it's really just to kind of get 2 to 3 ideas for each channel, just so you can have a really good variety of ideas to work from and to pick from, to move into the middle ring. And then, you know, you can go from there. Don't kind of overdo it and do 4 or 5 ideas for each one, because you're really just starting to waste your time at that point in time. You can always come back to it later if you want. If something you go down through this process and it's not working, you can always come back and come up with new ideas then. But really just try and come up with 2 to 3 ideas to start, at least 2, and then a maximum of 3. So at this point in time, we'll talk a little bit about examples of kind of where you should be thought process wise on coming up with ideas for each of these. So like, let's say you're coming up with ideas for targeting blogs. At this stage, you're really just trying to think of like, okay, what are some ways that I can utilize targeting blogs for my business? And you could search for blogs that focus on topics that are relevant to your company. Or have a reader or viewer base that matches your target demographic. And blogs, in this case, blogs and vlogs, same thing here. So, relevant YouTube channels can really be good for you, or relevant, blog posts or websites that have, blogs that are really relevant to the products or services that you're providing can be a good place for you to start. Just start searching for those and seeing if there's any that you think would really work for you or potentially could work for you. And then what you would, some of the things that you could do in order to get access to those and to really work with those bloggers or vloggers. Maybe you provide influential bloggers early access or offer early access in exchange for spreading the word about your products or services. That can be a really effective strategy. Maybe you build a special offer just for their reader or viewer base and put together a draft guest post that they can run with. This will make it easier for busy bloggers to promote your content. Bloggers are always looking for content. So if you basically handwrite it for them and put it together and make it to where all they have to do is turn around, make some minor edits and push it out, that saves them a whole lot of time. It gives them some great content to push out, especially if the content that you're providing them or what it is that you're doing is very relevant to their target demographic as well and their reader or viewer base. So those are some examples of ideas for like if you were trying to come up with ideas for targeting blogs that you can come up with and kind of put in that 2 to 3 idea section. But you'd really want to be a little more specific. Directly, you'd want to also include, okay, well, I'm thinking about these blogs or these vlogs or these channels. I'm thinking about these vlogs or these blogs or these channels. So that way, you can really kind of specify how you plan to execute on that channel. Another example for, let's say, unconventional PR is you do something big, cheap, fun, and original. It has to be creative and extraordinary to succeed, but just try and think of, different PR stunts or, ways that you can get the media's attention by doing something unique and creative for your business and trying to get some exposure that way. Honestly, customer appreciation can lead to great PR. This can be done through gifts or contests. Amazing customer support is always a really great way. If you get a lot of people talking about how great your customer support is and how great your customer relationships or how well you maintain those relationships with your customers, how well you do that, then that's unconventional PR. That's basically people putting out mini press releases for you about how amazing it is to utilize or buy products from you or utilize the services that you provide, because they know that if something goes wrong or something is not done to their expectations, that you're going to do everything in your power to fix that. And that's just something that a lot of people are willing to talk about and share their experiences with other people. So that's a really great way to think about how to utilize unconventional PR. And then another one that not a lot of people want to do, they try to ignore, is sales. You don't want to rule out cold calling. That's still an effective way for a lot of businesses to get some initial traction, especially from early adopters. You also want to make sure that you have an effective sales funnel that has prospects enter at the top, qualifies these leads, and closes them effectively. So you want to map out your sales funnel, identify blockages, and remove them. You want to keep the buying process as simple as possible. Keep it simple, stupid, kiss. And so these are some ways that, kind of in the outer ring, how you should be thinking about these channels, just to give you a few examples. So moving into the middle ring, At this point in time, you're going to look at all of the ideas you've come up with, the 2 to 3 ideas you've come up for each of the 19 different traction channels, and you're going to pick 3 of the most promising channels to actually test. You're going to try and make sure that your cost and your time spent on each test is very low. This is not where you're jumping in and saying like, yes, I'm going all full force. I have a budget of $1,000 to test on this one idea, and I'm going to put all 1,000 into it. No, you want to make sure that you're testing it out just enough to see if you're going to get a bite on any of these channels. And you want to pick just 3, because if you're focusing on more than 3, you're not spending enough time on it. But if you're focusing on just one yet, you're not doing enough to really see, and do comparisons basically. And so let's say if you decided that trade shows was a potential good idea for you. At this point in time, you do want to start maybe reaching out to previous exhibitors. If you're about to go to another trade show for the second time, then you may want to start contacting people that you've met previously to schedule meetings and dinners ahead of time. So that way you have meetings and get-togethers set up when you're going to the trade shows. You might want to put a bigger budget into items that you give out at your booth, but you want to make sure that you include a strong call to action on every item that you give out. You want to make it easy for people to remember, what it is that you did, what it is that the products or services that you offer, and why they should reach back out to you, or why they should go and visit your site, or why they should go and tell somebody else about your products or services. Let's say you're doing speaking engagements and you feel like speaking engagements, you've come up with some really good ideas for speaking engagements. A couple of things to keep in mind. You want to remember that you're doing organizers a favor. They have to book time. They have to find presenters to come and get to speak. So you're doing them a favor. But at the same time, you want to be very supportive of what it is they're trying to do, and thankful, and be humble and show some gratitude. So that way they can potentially have you continuously come back again and again. So maybe at this point in time, if you're starting to see traction in speaking engagements, you start to spend more time developing and practicing your story to generate a better engagement from the audience each time you present. At first, if you're just developing the idea, thinking about doing speaking engagements, maybe you just go out, you do some preparation, but you go out and you spend a little bit of time presenting. And then if you start to see some traction there, and it starts to seem like you're getting some good traction for the amount of time that you spent on it, then you start to spend a little bit more time. So that way you can see if the traction starts to build up more. If you spend more time on building your story, and building your presentation and practicing the presentation that you give, and you start to see more and more people start to talk to you after the speaking engagement or reach out to you through email afterwards, then you can start to see like, wow, like the time that I spend into this does improve the amount of traction that I get from it. And so that's kind of where you should be. If you're thinking about the middle ring and you're thinking about, moving from there, you're getting out of idea stage and you're getting into testing stage, but you're still trying to make sure that you're not spending a ton of time on any of these 3 channels. You're just trying to spend a little bit of money, a little bit of time, just to see if you start to get some bites. So going into inner ring, this is really where you're so after you do the middle ring, and in the process of doing the middle ring really is where you're gonna find that one of the traction channels is most likely going to do a lot better, or at least it's gonna be very obvious which one of the 3 channels does better than the other 2. And so that's really when you wanna start to focus your time, your energy, and your budget, your money, capital into that one channel. Focus on the one that's worked the best, refine strategies and increase budget into that channel. So let's say if you were working on affiliate programs and you started to see some traction going through affiliate programs. At this point in time, you should be developing your network and a process for maintaining and communicating with your affiliates so that it becomes scalable. So that way it's not just always you having to reach out personally, individually to affiliates to make sure that you're keeping up with them, to make sure that you're doing the payouts and everything, to make sure that they're getting the content that they need. You want to set up some processes, and maybe even start looking at some payout programs that are a little more in depth. So you can develop or integrate software that makes your payouts to your affiliates simple and easy. At first, you would want to just start. By knowing how much you can spend to acquire a customer and keep it below that. But as you get deeper into this channel, you can test more complicated payout programs, and also try and start to automate some of those processes. All right, so the last part of this is knowing when to rinse and repeat, when to start over, okay? So when the needle starts to slow down, you start over. And honestly, you should be starting over before it even starts to slow down. You do not want to lose momentum. So know when to start over. Don't wait until you lose momentum. Remember that different channels work best for different stages. Some channels, like the blog channel that we talked about earlier, targeting blogs, that might work great at first when you're just starting up a company, because you're getting in directly with potential target demographics. You're getting into a channel that may not be overcrowded with a lot of organizations that are in your space that are a lot bigger than you, that have a lot more marketing dollars and budgets. So you're going to start to focus in on things that, maybe the bigger players in the game are not utilizing, like targeting blogs. But as you start to grow, you're going to find that targeting blogs becomes harder and harder for you to keep at a scalable pace. And so you're going to have to start to switch over to other channels that can be scalable. Now, you may be able to figure out a way to make something like targeting blogs very scalable and utilizing targeting blogs very scalable, but it's probably not going to be the same way that you started off with. Or it's going to maybe require a larger budget than you could have afforded initially to make it scalable. So it's going to shift. The way you utilize that channel is going to shift. And so that's why it's important to continuously go back to this method and say, okay, I figured out a channel that really moves the needle forward for me. I'm going to focus in on that channel. And then as I continue to get traction with that, I'm going to get to a certain point where as soon as I start to see that traction plateau, and it starts not really to slow down, but really plateau, I'm going to go back to the drawing board and start coming up with other ideas. So that way I can be prepared for whenever I do start to lose momentum, or maybe even start to execute on some of these things and test some of these other ideas out before I lose momentum. It's really important for you to continuously test new things out, so that way you maintain the momentum, you keep up the traction, and you can keep up that growth that automatically comes with getting traction through these channels. So just because one channel works for you in the beginning of your company does not mean it's going to be your best channel forever. Some channels work well at first, but because there's a lot of competition utilizing that platform, maybe it doesn't work well at first. Maybe it works well later on once you have more budget, or like, you flip that. Maybe there's not a lot of competition utilizing that channel, but it's because it's not very scalable. And so you're going to be able to utilize it at first, and it's going to help you get some of those initial customers that you're looking for, help you get you some of that initial traction that you're looking for. But later on, you're going to have to shift channels. So always go back before you start to lose traction and reevaluate using the Bullseye method. So you make sure that you monitor the traction you're receiving from each channel and start the Bullseye method over again before your traction channel starts to slow down. And that is it. So I hope that you enjoyed learning about the Bullseye method. I hope that you decide to try and utilize this method. I guarantee you, if you put some time into it, put some thought into coming up with different ideas for each of the 19 channels, start to test them out, pick 3, start to test them out with a little bit of money and a little bit of time, you're going to find one that is really going to shine for the stage of your company. And then you're going to just focus on that. And then whenever you get to a point where it starts to plateau, start it over again. And if you keep doing that, you're going to continuously start to see traction and growth. And if you do run into any issues utilizing this, or you're not sure how to come up with certain ideas for certain channels, feel free to reach out to us at hello@opportunitymachine.org. We're always happy to help with brainstorming ideas for these sort of things. And if you have any questions related to the material in the presentation, or if you would like to request a topic for another Click to Startup video, please contact us once again at hello@opportunitymachine.org. My name is Destin Ortego, and I hope to see you in the next video.